back to another episode of Writer's Block. I am your host, as always, Journal staff writer Sean Reider. Today we have a great Idaho State preview. Wonderful conversation with the voice of the Bengals. Scott Gross gave us a really nice picture of where Idaho State is at right now, entering this weekend's home opener against the University of New Mexico. Before we get into that conversation, I do want to encourage you guys, as always, if you like this content, if you like our written content, if you like getting all these updates, please subscribe to the Albuquerque Journal. Please subscribe to our YouTube page here. Support the podcast. Subscribe on Spotify and Apple Music and all that. Apple Podcasts, excuse me. Just support the product and be sure to look out for the live shows that Jeff Grammer and I are doing every Tuesday after Jason Eck's weekly press conference, and then on Saturday nights and sometimes probably Friday nights too a little bit this season after any UNM football game. We really appreciate and enjoy the engagement. I think it makes it a better product, and we like to get as many people involved as possible. But with that being said, here's our conversation with Scott Gross. Hope you enjoy.
If you enjoy our podcast, please like and subscribe and consider becoming a digital subscriber to the Albuquerque Journal to help us bring you more content like this. You can find this episode and all of our podcasts on the Albuquerque Journal website, abqjournal.com, as well as YouTube, iTunes, and Spotify. See the show notes for a discount code on a digital subscription. Thank you for supporting the Albuquerque Journal, New Mexico's leading news.
All right, I am pleased to be joined by Scott Gross, the voice of the Idaho State Bengals. Scott, thank you so much for coming on today, sir.
Hey, it's my pleasure. Thanks for having me, and looking forward to seeing my old friend Frank Mercogliano when we get down there this week and make my first visit to Albuquerque. So it should be a great weekend.
He said, before yesterday's press conference, he did not want this branded as the Frank Mercogliano Bowl, and I think we might have to supersede his wishes there.
Well, it could be, or it could be the Jason Eck reunion bowl, right? Because, Bengals have seen Jason Eck the last 3 years while he was up at Idaho, and Coach Hawkins is familiar with him at South Dakota and the work he did there. So, look, let's just call it the Lobos and the Bengals and see which team's going to pick up their first win of the season.
I did want to start with that. One of the things you mentioned there. Of course, a lot of people, around Idaho State are well familiar with Jason Eck, of course, from his 3-year run with the Vandals. What is kind of the feeling around those, around the program and fans and all that about, going up against a familiar face at a pretty different place?
Well, you got to understand. So for the older generation like myself, our big rival was always Weber State, right? But when Idaho left and then came back to FCS and the Big Sky Conference, a lot of the younger generation has kind of grabbed that Idaho State as a big rivalry game, and it is in its own right. It's an in-state rivalry. Let's not kid ourselves. But I think the folks here, Jason Eck did a great job up there. The first visit, Cody's first game against Jason Eck did not go very well. Up in the Kibbe Dome. The Vandals were on a playoff bubble or trying to get a home game maybe, and they played very, very well against a Bengal team that was still, in the first year of a new coach and a new program. Last year, it was a little better game, but again, Jason Eck does such a great job of disguising his offense as far as, like Cody mentioned it this morning at his press conference. They do so much leaning towards the run game out of the play action, and there's just different looks and different personnel, or the same personnel with different looks. And so it's a challenge. But I think the folks around Idaho State and Pocatello would love to see Cody Hawkins get over on Jason Eck, his third chance, right? And it would be an FCS win over an FBS program. So, yeah, I think there's some excitement there. But the reality is, this has been a tough schedule to start the season. We knew it would be, with 2 FBS games and a very good Southern Utah Thunderbird squad last Saturday, all games on the road. The Bengals don't play a home game until September 20th. Oh. So, it would have been nice to I think if folks would have taken 1 and 2 in those first 3 games. But we all knew that 0-3 was a possibility. But there's excitement here around the program. Look, 5-7 last year. I know it doesn't sound like a lot, but it was a good performance. The team showed improvement from the year before. And quite honestly, with this schedule, Sean, if they could go 5-7 this year, I think that would show even more improvement than maybe the 3-8 to 5-7.
No, absolutely. And, I think 5-7 last year was the most wins since like 2018, if I'm
That
not
sounds right.
mistaken
Yeah.
there. I did want to talk a little bit too about, head coach Cody Hawkins. To some, the name is familiar, the son of former Boise State and Colorado coach Dan Hawkins, who is on staff right now at ISU.
Yes.
I think he's director of player and staff development. How, what has this been like for Coach Hawkins? Obviously, he's in year 3 of a pretty total rebuild and kind of, taking things on and getting the program to a better place than it was.
Yeah, Cody is so genuine and so honest. He's refreshing to be around. He's very positive and upbeat. Look, he's not gonna wear rose-colored lenses all the time, right? I mean, he gets it. There's things that this team is going to have to do, over the next 2 or 3 years as he gets into years 4 and 5 and hopefully beyond that. And there's things that they're going to have to do this season. We've got a new defensive coordinator up here in Grant Duff, who joined the staff from Weber State. The Bengal defense, they've struggled against the run a little bit the first couple of games. But I have full confidence that, they'll get that figured out. But for Cody, he grew up kind of in Idaho, right? He was a little guy when his dad was over at Boise State. And he's got connections to the state. His wife went to Capitol High School over in Boise. He's got family here. He loves Pocatello as far as being close to the family he has in Idaho. It's a great place to raise a family. And so I think Cody's pretty excited. He's getting great support from the administration. That's the biggest thing he's always talking about. Athletic Director Pauline Theros has they're doing a good job of raising funds, upgrading facilities, maybe building some new facilities, making it easier on Cody and the coaching staff to have success in the program, recruit kids, retain kids, and try to build something here.
Mm-hmm. You mentioned the schedule earlier. Obviously, the 0-2 start. A couple weeks back, I think Idaho State really caught my eye and a lot of other people's eyes with the way they played. UNLV played them to a 38-31 loss, but they gave UNLV a pretty excellent scare in a lot of respects on the road. Last week, lost 46-24 to Southern Utah. You mentioned the toughness of the schedule and all of that. How are players and coaches kind of treating the 0-2 at this point? With I don't want no coach ever wants to take a moral victory in the UNLV element, but how are they treating it kind of right now?
It's kind of funny because Cody talked about that this morning in his press conference as well. Coming out of the UNLV game, obviously there was excitement, right? I mean, everybody was like, oh my gosh, they played them to a touchdown. This is a team that was picked to finish second in the Mountain West, and they've got all these former Power 4 players that have joined them. And Cody came out of that game. He says, fellas, look, we got to pump the brakes a little bit here, right? We did some good things, but there's stuff we still need to fix. And then he actually said the same thing after the Southern Utah game. They did not play well by their own admission. Quarterback Jordan Cook was not 100%. Their running game had some injuries. Defensively, they struggled. But he said, look, it's not all gloom and doom either. Let's pump the brakes on that and realize that we did good things in that game. But the negative stuff we can and will fix. So, look, that was one that as a program and as a team hoping to, have a playoff look in the FCS later in the season, that was a tough loss for Idaho State. There's no doubt about it. But I also believe that as this season goes along, Delane Fitzgerald and the Southern Utah Thunderbirds, they might surprise some people. I think this is going to be a very good football team. Love their running back, and I just like the way they play. Southern Utah is always going to give you 100%. They're going to be in your grill all day long defensively, and offensively they're going to attack downhill with the run, and that's exactly what they did. And unfortunately for the Bengal defense especially, they kind of struggled with some gap things. And Southern Utah, to be fair, showed them a totally different front than they have shown in the last 2 or 3 years. Instead of 4 down, they went 3 down, and that created some gap issues. And Cody said, they got caught by surprise a little bit, and they didn't get enough reps going against a 3-down front. So overall, I think, maybe I don't know if they're exactly where they thought they would be at this point. But we know the personnel is there. We know the coaching staff is there. And I think as this season goes along, you get through this tough start. The biggest thing coming up and the best thing for Idaho State is the bye week next week. By moving that UNLV game to 0 week, that gives ISU 2 bye weeks. They're battling some injuries, which you always get when you play against an FBS team as an FCS squad. And that'll give them a chance to kind of rest, heal up. And then they have Lincoln of California, which no disrespect to them, but that's a game that at home that ISU should win and hopefully be able not to have to play their starters all day, right? And so maybe you get a little extra rest time for your ones and the guys who are dinged up.
With this, I do want to talk a little bit about this ISU offense. Fans are going to see a lot of 10 personnel. They throw it a lot. They go fast. What, in your eyes, should New Mexico fans expect from this offense, and who are some of the players they really kind of need to be cognizant of? And I think you just touched on one of them a little bit ago too.
Yeah, well, here's the thing. ISU down at Southern Utah, their number 1 running back, Dason Brooks, is still battling a little bit of an injury. He played 1 down in that game, tried to give it a go, couldn't make it. Their other running back, Robert Freeman, the 4th, transfer from Utah State. He also kick returns. He does the kickoff returns. He got injured on the opening kick return and did not play the rest of the day. So the Bengals are a little banged up as far as the running game goes. And I'm not going to break any news here, but starting quarterback Jordan Cook is going to be unavailable for the next couple of weeks. He had a procedure. So you're going to see a couple of younger guys playing quarterback this weekend for Idaho State. I'm not sure of the rotation yet. Even Cody this morning said, I don't know who's going to start, whether it's Jackson Sharman or Davis Harson, Brian Harson's son. But probably going to see one of those 2 guys start, and they'll probably just trade off series most of the day on Saturday. But they're both very capable. That quarterback room at Idaho State is very deep. There's a lot of talent there. Granted, some of it's a little bit young. But not necessarily untested. And then the receiving core is just amazing. You'll see on the outside, Mike Schulikov, 6'6", 6'7", former high jumper, indoor high jump champion in the Big Sky Conference his first year at ISU before he started playing football. Zion Nunnally, transfer from Washington State, who battled injuries most of last year. He missed game 1 with a little tweak, but he played last week and was good. Julian Mason, number 80, another wideout. And then the slot receiver room is full. And you'll see some guys there that you'll like a lot. Ian Duarte out of Capitol High School, or Eagle High School over in Boise. Rayton Brown, possibly. Damian Morgan. So, yeah, but you're right. The Bengals want to throw it. But they've also been able to put more of an onus on the run game because they have a very, very talented and deep offensive line and offensive line room. But yeah, the ball's going to be in the air when the Bengals get to Albuquerque. I can tell you that.
Schulikov, and I'm sure you kind of feel the same way. It's like you go through like a full schedule as a beat writer or somebody working around, and like there's always guys you watch on tape and you're like, I got to keep seeing more of this guy throughout the season. Schulikov, to me, is that kind of guy for this Idaho State team, and I'm a little bit fascinated. So what, he was a high jump champion, and then he went over to football? Like, how did that all kind of play out for him?
Well, so he went to Centennial High School over in the West Ada, Boise Meridian area, and he was a track guy. He played some football, but as it was going along, he kind of went towards track and the high jump. That's how he actually got to Idaho State, was as a high jumper as part of the track team. And then I don't know if Cody kind of knew who he was, if he had seen him, talked to him about coming out and playing football a couple of years ago. And unfortunately for Mike, his first year, he had a pretty serious knee injury and missed, the latter part of the season. But he came on last year, kind of backing up Christian Fredrickson and Jeff Weimer. Those two guys are gone. So now, Mike Schulikov is the guy that a lot of people figure is the, I guess you would say he's the number one wideout. Although Zion Nunnally is there, and they've got some good guys in that room. Don't get me wrong, but Schulikov, you're right. He's kind of a freakish athlete. He's 6'6". He can jump like crazy. He's got soft hands, runs great routes, and so yeah, he's a fun guy to watch. There's no doubt about it. I mean, Christian Fredrickson the last couple of years was the guy that if you had to make that catch, that one big catch in a game, or that tough catch on the sideline or in traffic, he was the guy. Schulikov I think he's kind of sliding into that role. We'll find out as the season goes along. But yeah, Mike Schulikov is a great athlete.
We're moving over to the other side of the ball. You mentioned him earlier. Grant Duff is the Bengals' first-year defensive coordinator, and Eck made a point yesterday to say, this is completely brand new. We haven't seen this before, and they really throw a lot at opposing teams. How would you describe this defense? And again, who are some of the players you think fans should be on the lookout for?
Well, first, description of the offense. They're very downhill. Grant Duff is a guy who likes to play offensive defense, if that makes sense. I mean, he's aggressive. They don't want to sit back necessarily and let things happen. They kind of want to force the tempo, which I guess any good defense does. But Grant varies his fronts. You'll see 4s. You'll see 3s. Sometimes you'll see 5 guys up on the line. He moves some players around. And so, it's obviously giving up over 300 yards a game on the ground the first 2 games. There are things that need to be improved and adjusted or fixed. But it's talking with Coach Hawkins this morning. Cody said, look, it's not a personnel issue. It's us making sure that we have guys in the right position all the time, and they understand, how this offense works. And if you're a gap A guy, you better stay in gap A, because if you're not there, you don't have as much help. And so I think that's some of the adjustment these guys are making from the defense that they played last year under Josh Runda. And it's just different, right? He had a 3 down. He went the 3-3-5 with the 2 high safeties. This is a little different defense that Grant Duff brings in here. And I like the varied looks. I like the intensity. They've moved some guys around. Jaden Bell, a Highland High School graduate from here in Pocatello, actually brother-in-law of quarterback Jordan Cook. They moved him from a safety, and he's now playing linebacker. And I think that's a really nice fit for him there. One of the guys that really has played so well the first 2 games of the season, not totally unexpected, but a little bit of a surprise, is Rylan Leathers. He's a redshirt freshman out of Amarillo, Texas. He was going to be the backup in that safety position, and the starter got hurt Wednesday before the UNLV game. And Rylan Leathers comes in and has an amazing performance against the Rebels. He played well again last week against Southern Utah. Forced a fumble that led to a scoop and score by safety Mason Young, who is a All Big Sky preseason pick at safety. And then talk about the other linebackers. I mean, you've got another Big Sky preseason in Nathan Reynolds, another Idaho kid. Nate has been playing well. And on the defensive front, Maka Tuakoi on the defensive end, one of the defensive end positions, is a young man who's really starting to come into his own. And then I think maybe the surprise a little bit, if you want to say that, is a true freshman, Trey Shorty, in the backfield. I think I've got him listed as a safety, but either way, let me tell you, I got my notes here real quick. Yeah, Trey's actually the nickelback. So Trey Shorty is a true freshman out of California, and he has played very well in his first 2 games. Shows no fear, if you will, of being put in the spotlight on a big stage in Division I football.
Scott, I will kind of close on this one here. Of course, Idaho State had the UNLV game a couple weeks back and all that too. I mean, and it's always a big deal, for a team to go up a level and try and compete, right? Right. UNM just made a big deal about, going up and competing against Michigan and all that too. Of course, Idaho State going up a level to compete against UNM. How much how much of an opportunity are are kind of players and coaches treating a game like this right now, and how are they kind of talking about it at this point?
Well, I mean, look, it's that whole deal with FCS versus FBS. I mean, the old joke is you go play the game, you hope the check doesn't bounce, and you don't get anybody hurt. And I think that's part of it. But I also think that Cody Hawkins and the staff are looking at this as an opportunity, especially with some of the injuries on the offensive side. Can we develop some depth, right? Can we, if they have to come in again later in the season, or if Jordan Cook maybe is out a week or so longer than they think, or whatever, right? Get some confidence, get some reps in game time against a good opponent. Look, we know that Jason Eck's team is going to be ready to play. I mean, Bengal fans know that. It's a step up, bigger, faster, better, maybe. I don't know if you want to necessarily, if that's always the case. But I think the Bengals want to come and compete, learn a little bit more about themselves, and as we said, try to come out as healthy as possible. They're going to compete. Don't get me wrong. It's not like they're just going to come in and treat it as a practice game. They're not going to do that. They're going to battle and they're going to compete. And the respect is there for Jason Eck and his staff and the Lobos as a whole. But I hope that it's a competitive game into the fourth quarter, much like what we saw at UNLV a couple of weeks ago. And maybe because of how things went down last week in Cedar City, we might see that.
Scott, that is all I have for you today. I thank you so much for coming on. You gave a wonderful breakdown of Idaho State, and I'm looking forward to seeing you in Albuquerque, man.
Well, I appreciate that, and I'm glad to come join you, and I appreciate the invitation. And we'll be, like I said, Albuquerque sometime Friday afternoon. Get the first look at it.
Beautiful. All right, safe travels. Thank you, Scott.
Thank you, Sean.